Hey folks, Beginner Bob here again, and I'm back in my shop with another video for you. It's going to be on a double barrel stove again because the one I built, the one that's behind me, it's cooking right now. It's gained a lot of popularity with some friends and family, which I think is great. My neighbor is building one for himself to heat up his shop, and my uncle asked me to build him one, and I am more than grateful to do that for him. But what I wanted to do with this video is kind of walk you guys through how I do it as the build goes on, and you can see what I'm doing and the mistakes I make, and hey, we'll have some fun with it as well. So this is my stove behind me, as you can see. This is the one that has the heat exchanger on the top. It's got a fan in the back, and it's blowing the hot air through when I do turn it on. I'm going to make some modifications though, because what I did with this particular one is I had actually split the barrel in two to get this plate in there as a baffle. I wanted to keep as much heat in that heat exchanger as I could, but I'm going to make it a little easier on myself. So let me flip around here real quick. So what I'm starting off with is two barrels, as you see. This green one right here is a fully sealed barrel. It's just a food grade type barrel. I've already done some stripper on it. I sprayed some stripper on it because I want to get that paint off of there so that I can put some high heat paint on it. And it's also going to be a custom color, so it'll be kind of neat to do that. So I'm letting that paint strip off. This is the other barrel. This is the one with the removable top. It comes with a lock that is usually on the top right there, but I take that off because I'll end up welding that one closed. This is going to be the actual heat exchanger. This is the top half of the barrel. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get my pattern associated with the top so that I can drill out the 2.5 inch diameter hole that I'm going to use. The pipes that I'm using are 2.5 inch diameter. This is just exhaust pipe. I got it from a local muffler shop, and I appreciate that. So it works great, and when I line it up with the hole or the marking on there, I'll drill that through. The pipe will go all the way through. I'll weld both ends, and it'll be a completed heat exchanger. And this is the beginning stages that I wanted to show you. So if you have any questions about that, by all means, message me at the end of the video or anytime, and I'll see if I can explain what I might have missed. So we'll get started on the build. Thanks. Okay, so one of the first things I'm doing with this lid on the heat exchanger is I've actually put the lid on the bottom side. Let me show you real quick so you can kind of see in there. The lid goes down there, and what I want to do is I want to drill all the holes at once so that way I can get all the holes aligned with each other. But this lid is a little bit smaller than the bottom half of it, so I have to try and center it and align it and blah blah blah. So one of the things I did is I put my little mark on here and I lined it up with the line on the barrel. After I made my grid pattern of what I need, I then went ahead and drilled a bunch of small holes in where the 2.5 inch holes are going to go, and I'm just going to take this little nail and put it in there, and that's my alignment. So you can see I have nails all in here just as an alignment tool because I don't want that lid to move or shift back and forth, and that way when I start drilling my 2.5 inch hole, hopefully everything will stay aligned pretty well. So we'll start with that. All right, so there's the first hole. As you can see, this is the top piece, and then there are clearly two holes that are aligned perfectly. The nails kept everything just right, and I got some crappy cutting oil, but it works for now, and I've got 19 more holes to go. So I'll go ahead and get this done, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I got all the holes cut, as you can see there, and there is my mess. So that's what you're going to end up with. There's a lot of shavings, so please wear safety glasses. And from the noise of drilling all these holes out, there's 20 of them here, wear some earplugs or something like that. So what it ends up looking like is now I have identical holes, so that when I put the lid back down on the bottom, all the holes will line up for my pipes. I end up using 2 different drills. The first battery operated drill, I mean, if you have one of those, it'll work. It's just you're going to go through a lot of battery recharge. I ended up using my skill drill here, electric. And let me tell you, when you're drilling with one of these, either one of these, take it slow and steady, because even though you think speed will get you through the metal, it doesn't. As soon as that bit catches on that steel, that thing will spin around and almost break your wrist. When I did my first stove, I ended up drilling my holes with one of these hole saws. It is made for steel. Might be able to see it did break a few teeth off, and it's not the best. So what I ended up getting was this carbide bit. It has a little spring on the end of the drill there, and it worked perfect. So I'd highly recommend one of those. I got it on Amazon. I don't remember what the cost was. It wasn't much, but it was well worth it. I think 50 bucks, but well worth it over that one. So that's where I'm at right now, and I'll get this barrel stripped down from all the paint. I'm gonna get these holes cleaned up. That way all the pipes will fit in. And also there's this seal on the inside of the lid. You can see this white seal along here. What I do is I take a knife and I'm going to cut that seal out, because I don't want it in there. I'm going to end up welding this lid back to the bottom of the barrel there, and I don't want that in there because it'll melt or it'll burn or something like that. And this lid's going to be permanent once I get all the tubes and everything in there. But that's for another episode. So that's where we're at. All right. So I've started the stripping of the paint, and I'm using my DeWalt grinder here. I picked up this Avanti Pro paint stripping disc. It's kind of a, I've never used one before, but even though I put stripper on this barrel, it's actually taken the paint off pretty nicely. So I wanted to test it on my other barrel, and I have stripper on the top, as you can see, but I don't have any stripper on the side. I wanted to see if it would just take it off without the stripper, and it actually seems to be doing pretty good. So I may not put any stripper on this barrel and just try and get the paint off the way it is. But as you can see, that's peeling up nicely, and I'm going to continue on this one and get the whole barrel stripped down to bare metal, so I can put the door in and the exhaust duct. All right. Okay, so I got the first barrel about 99% done. I'm going to clean up this extra paint. But you can see that disc stripper, I almost wore it down to the nub, and I wasn't really putting any pressure on it. It did a great job, by all means. This was much easier than doing it when I did a wire brush, trying to get it off. I have another one. It's the same brand, Avanti, but it's used for a drill. So I'm going to try this one just to clean up this excess that I missed. Some little bits on the side. I'm kind of anal about that kind of stuff just because I like it clean and ready to go. And I have my wire brush that goes on a drill, and the corners on the inside, I can hit those with that and get it cleaned up. So overall, I'm happy with it. I may have to buy another one for that barrel, but whatever. It'll work, and I'll just keep pressing on. Okay, so I'm happy with the barrel so far. There's probably a little bit of stripping I'll do, but I want to get moving forward on the barrel. So I'm using this door kit. Let me show you what this is from. This is the camp stove kit and the double barrel kit. So there's two different kits that you'd have to purchase. They're about roughly $54, $55 a piece, but that's what you get. And so I'm going to get this set up and get it lined up. Now, unfortunately, when this one came in, this little lock right here, through the Postal Service, I'm not going to technically blame anybody, but this broke off. It's a cast piece, and this is just for the door lock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually replace that with mine. And so I'm going to take mine off. It's got a little ceramic handle on it. And the reason I'm going to do that is because whenever I run my stove, to keep it going fairly well, I have to keep the door cracked. And that's one of the modifications I want to make on the next one. You can see I have the large bung hole on the top. And I thought initially by doing it this way, I could keep the door lower and, you know, whatever. I had a certain idea of designing mine. So I'm going to change that. And what I'm going to do is, so this is going to be my door. It's going to open in this fashion when I get that hole cut out. But I'm also going to take, this is a 2-inch diameter pipe, and that will screw into somehow into that hole. And once I get that screwed in there and secured, I'll probably cut this upper thread off. So I'm just using this as kind of the whole meat of the thing. I'm going to weld a nut on the side right here, and with a little bolt, and then I'm going to make a little door, a little swinging circular diameter door on it, so that it can swing out of the way and in and out. Because I want the air to circulate from the bottom and get in there. And on my stove, that's why I have to keep the door open. This little opening that the kit comes with, it works fairly well. But, you know, to get more oxygen in there, get that fire going pretty good, I'm going to do it this way. So we'll get going on this. I want to get this door centered up. So what I did first is I established, based on this square bottom right here, where the center of that mark is. And then I did the same right up here. And then I just took my straight edge, or anything that you have that's, you know, is straight. I laid it across there and I made my marks. I also found center on the door, so you can kind of see a little black mark right there. Anyway, I went from center to center there, and then I measured from outside to outside and found center there, so that when I get this in here, I will be able to line up that mark. And I kind of want to get as close to that bung as possible. So now that mark is lined up, and that mark is lined up. And if I feel happy with that based on distance and centering, and when I put this back in, so this will screw in there fairly snug. And again, I want to understand where all that is relative to the center of the barrel. Then I will trace out the inside, because that's going to make a cut, and then I will mark all the holes for the outside of the door and get those holes drilled out. But remember, you're marking the inside of this opening. Don't mark the outside and cut the outside, otherwise you won't have a door. Okay, I'll get started. So as you can see, I've got the inside diameter marked out. I've got all the holes marked out, and I'm happy with that. One thing before I get done is I wanted to establish that center line again. So I'm lining it back up, and I want to put a mark on the outside of the barrel on each end. And the reason I want to do that is because when I get to the point of putting the legs on, so I have to tilt this barrel back up on the floor, and I have to align the legs. I'm going to use those lines, that center line, with my level, so that I can see that the barrel is straight up and down, or perpendicular to the floor. That'll help me get the legs lined up perfectly, and the door will look straight, and so on and so forth. So I traced out the inside diameter of that hole. However, what I'm going to end up doing with my cutting wheel is I'm probably going to come in and cut about 1/4 inch in from that line. And the reason I want to do that is because that edge, when you cut it, it's going to be sharp. And granted, you can clean it up, but every time you open and close that door, you run the risk of, snagging something, snagging your hand especially. And I'm going to eliminate doing that by cutting this about 1/4 inch short. I can do that because I know that the lip of the door right here, I have about 1/4 inch of play. So I have enough there to trim just past that line. I'm only using that line as a guide, and I'll be able to get it centered and hopefully fit in there perfectly. All right, so I got that little door opening cut out. As you can see, I went around just the outside of my line on there. So I'm done with that. I had pre-drilled the holes before I took this opening out. It just gave the barrel a little bit more support. You can see down in there, there's some excess food product that was in this barrel. So I'll get that washed out and make sure it's nice and clean. But let me check the door. If I mark my holes correctly, there's that one and that one. Get my line lined up. All right, so everything should line up. When I pre-drilled the holes, I just did a small pilot hole, and then I used a 1/4 inch drill bit to drill the hole. The screw is under that, but that gives me a little bit of leeway to make sure that it'll line up right. And then when I'm ready for the door to get bolted on, we'll get to that. So that's it for now. Before I move on, there was an important step that I forgot to demonstrate, and that was the vent holes. So I had forgotten to mark that out. I got ahead of myself. So I need to cut that opening for those vent holes. So all I'm doing right here is I'm marking where the first openings on each side are and getting a general line on that. Now what I'll do is I'll just try and, cut that out so it's nice and straight. It'll come straight across this way, and then maybe I'll put a little arc on it because I have enough meat in the frame to put a nice little arc in there, or just at an angle. But I'll get that cut out and show you what that looks like. There, I got that vent opening cut out, so that'll help things out. Get this on here, line those holes up, line everything up as best I can. So what that does is so now I have a vent here, and then I'll have that vent tube in here. But sorry I missed that on the earlier session, and we'll keep moving forward. I want to make the little swinging door for this thing, and I don't have much in scrap steel, but I do have this piece of angle. It's 1/4 inch thick. It's overkill, I know, but you know what? If you're going to do something, why not just go all out? So I think what I'm going to do is I'll place this out. I'm going to trace this circle out on here from the pipe. I need the nut, so I need to trace around that nut because I'll drill a hole through that as well. And then I'm going to put a little handle out here to open and close the door. So let me get that traced out, and maybe I'll move forward, I'll get it cut out and see how that looks. So I've been working on this little door. Like I said, I was going to take this and cut the upper threads off, which I did, and that would screw into there like so. I'm going to end up welding this in place just because it's going to be permanent regardless. If you want to replace yours later in life, that's fine. But I'm also going to weld this nut flush with the top right there, and then this bolt, and I've got some springs here, and this is going to be my spring tension on the actual door itself. And then the door will close like this. So I spent a little time on this, I kind of made it, somewhat fancy, custom, however you want to look at it. But what will end up happening is when this thing opens, it'll swing out of the way like this, get some oxygen in there, and then swing back. And that spring tension should hold that in place depending on where it's at. Like I said, I just cut this out of some scrap 1/4 inch angle that I had and used my cutting wheel and grinder and all that, and just drilled a couple little divot holes in there just to kind of make it look a little unique. So I'm going to get going on that and get this welded up. So I've got the air inlet done. This is my little handle, my little door. I put a little stopper on the bottom right here just to keep it from moving any further. But there's tension on the spring right here, so I can fling it open, close it, and if I need to tighten this nut down, I can. So this is just an experiment I'm doing. And again, if I'm looking at it from here, I'm lining it up. The door will be right here, and I don't know, I think it looks pretty good. And I just put a little tack on the bottom right there just to hold that pipe in. I don't want the pipe spinning, and we'll see how it works. All right, we got the barrel laid down. I've got it cleaned out. I think there was butter inside there. Not exactly sure, but looked like butter and tasted like butter. Just kidding. Anyway, I'm lining the legs up right now, so I have both legs on, and what I decided to do was just go 4 inches from the edge on the front and on the back. And like I said before, I was going to take my mark right there and down here, and I put my square on it, and I have already done that, but everything is square now. So if I step back, the stove should be square, and it looks pretty good. Optical illusions can probably be deceiving a little bit. Anyway, so I'm going to mark those holes underneath. So I got to lay down on the ground. There's 4 holes on each leg. So I'll get those marked, get those holes drilled, and then put it all back together. And I'm going to weld the nut on the inside of the barrel when I get that ready, because I don't want that nut to move, and if I have to take it apart during delivery or something like that, I just want to make sure it's all secured in there so I don't have to monkey with it once the fire brick and everything's done. So that's where we're at right now. Okay, so I have the holes drilled and I've got the front legs put on. The barrel's upside down right now, and I have placed the screws with the nuts on the inside, and the front half is secured because I have access through the door. However, on the back side, when I flip this over, there's my holes. When I flip this back over, I'm just going to set that on top of the legs because there's a sequence that has to happen first. I need to put this damper on the top. So when I flip it back over, this is going to go on top. I'm going to cut the hole for it and drill all the holes. And once that hole is cut, that will then allow me to have access to these holes right here, because the damper is going to be right above those legs. And when I go to weld those nuts on the inside, I can then go through the hole, through the damper hole, and reach those and weld those nuts secure. Part of the reason, again, why I want to weld all that stuff in there is because I still have to take it apart and I still have to paint the entire barrel on top and bottom. So all I'm doing is just doing the pre-work, getting everything set up so that I can take it apart, paint it, get it reassembled, and then I have to deliver it about 40 miles away. So I may have to disassemble it again, and the nuts are all going to be welded in there, and I'm ready to go. So let's move on. I've got the hole cut, so I just placed my damper on there to make sure everything lined up. As you can see, that's on there. And just double check to make sure that that thing turns. because you definitely need it to turn. Now on my stove, I've never used it. I just leave it open like that. And the reason I put the damper on the stove barrel is because if you have just a single barrel stove, this is what they give you. So that's why I put the damper there. The double barrel stove kit comes with another flange for the top and bottom, so I wouldn't worry about that. Now I have access to those holes on the inside like I talked about earlier, and now I can put my bolts in and get the back legs secured, and that way I can get the nuts welded on there. So let's get that done.